Welcome back. I'm going to get around to actually finishing this wine at some point. Episode 2 of our unfilmed recipe redemptions. This episode, we're going to talk about the recipes that I've run across that uh, are bad, but with just the tiniest tweak would be perfectly fine, and they weren't worth redeeming. But the ideas that I have, I think, would just be just a tiny tweak that would make them perfectly acceptable. Let's take a look at some.
Okay, here we go. The ones that are too easy to bother doing a redemption for. Let's start off with this vegetable quiche. So, looking at the recipe, it's basically some fresh herbs suspended in aspic with some curd or other soft cheese. It's very vague, so that can, depending on the cheese that you chose, would change the flavor quite drastically. But there's not a whole lot of other. In fact, there's no other seasoning. It's just herbs suspended in aspic. And then the topping is cooked vegetables suspended in more aspic. And the only thing that makes this sort of quiche like other is the fact that it is in a prepared 10-inch pie shell, like pastry case is what they call it, but it's a pie shell. Um, this is not a quiche. A quiche is definitely a baked good. This is not, other than the pie shell, this is not baked. It's also, it's not a gelatin suspended dish. It is and it isn't. It uses a royale, which is a mixture of dairy and egg. And when you bake that, the egg coagulates and forms this nice thick, um, you know, custard, basically. So this is not a quiche. Um, and honestly, there's no seasoning whatsoever to this other than the cheese. So it's just you're just depending on the herbs, whatever butter is in the pie crust that you've used, and the natural flavor of the vegetables. Eh, You could go one of two ways. If you want the natural flavor of the vegetables, just eat the vegetables. Just have some. There's nothing wrong with some nice cooked vegetables, a nice side of peas. If you want to be British about it, you can do mushy peas. Have the carrots on the side. You can braise them. You can bake them. There's all sorts of things. Saute them, stir fry. I think around the edge, those are green beans. Whatever you can have those, and the mustard crest that's suspended in the bottom layer with the cheese. uh, Make yourself some herbs, have them with some crackers. Great. But this is unnecessary. If you want a vegetable quiche, make a vegetable quiche. Saute some vegetables. Really caramelize some onions. Um, Saute the vegetables and have them all together, and then make yourself an actual royale. Mix it with some good melting cheeses, and maybe top with a little sprinkle of Parmesan on top too, and bake that sucker. Make an actual quiche. This is somewhere in between, and it has none of the positive aspects of either a nice side of cooked vegetables or an actual vegetable quiche. Next, the mayonnaise cake. This is one of many, many examples of a recipe where they just tried to find a way to use the product in something you don't normally use it in. Mayonnaise cake. They put mayonnaise in a chocolate cake. But let's think about what's actually in mayonnaise. You've got egg yolks, you've got a little bit of vinegar or something acidic, but not really a whole lot. It's mostly there as a flavorant, um, and some sort of vegetable oil usually. The egg provides a richness. It provides lecithin, which is the emulsifier, which combines the vinegar with the oil and creates a suspension that is pleasing to the mouth. Um, Oil and egg and water. Those are ingredients that you already put into a chocolate cake. So actually using mayonnaise, it doesn't really get you anything other than the fact that you can say that you use mayonnaise in your cake instead of adding an egg and some vegetable oil to your cake mix. Um, this is probably fine. There's really nothing to redeem here. it's just hype to say that I made a cake with mayonnaise. Who cares? If you take the constituent ingredients of mayonnaise, it is what you put into a chocolate cake anyway. Um, so there's nothing really to redeem here. It's just kind of a silly gimmick. Next, yes, the classic eggs and spaghetti. What? That's right. There is no classic eggs and spaghetti, but this is just something that somebody decided they were going to dress up some canned spaghetti by shoving some halved hard-boiled eggs into it. Um, this isn't bad. I like eggs. I like spaghetti, and sometimes I've even been known to like canned spaghetti. Um, but basically, this is just someone's idea of garnish. There's really I don't think this really adds anything to either eggs or spaghetti. There's nothing really to redeem here. It's just meh. Uh, you could put pretty much anything with this, and other than eggs, and it would be exactly the same. It's like, yay, it's hot dogs and spaghetti, or I don't know, pickles, whatever. It's just garnish, really. Okay, I think this looks far worse than it actually is. They're calling this a cottage cheese seashell casserole. Looking at it, basically, you melt butter, blend in flour and seasoning, so you make a roux. Slowly stir in milk, so you're making a seasoned bechamel sauce. Mix well until well blended. Heat, stirring until it thickens. Okay, a bechamel sauce. Remove and stir in the remaining ingredients, which include 3 cups of cooked seashell macaroni. Okay, so seashell pasta. A 7-ounce can of salmon, drained and flaked. So let's see here, 8 ounces or 1 cup of Borden's cottage cheese. A package of frozen peas, cooked frozen peas, and a quarter cup of diced pimento, which they say is optional. Um, so basically, you're making a salmon instead of tuna, but you're doing a seafood casserole, pasta casserole. The only weird thing is that you're adding cottage cheese to it. Um, I've always found cottage cheese. I mean, it's cheese, so it's a very very neutral cheese. It's bland, um, and I've never really found it to be. It's an okay melting cheese. I mean, it's already pretty soft and kind of goopy. Uh, so I guess adding it to a casserole is kind of inoffensive. This almost really belongs in the bad presentation video rather than the too easy to fix. Although it is easy to fix. Um, you can make a salmon casserole. I wouldn't use cottage cheese in it, but this is basically just a simple casserole. I would add a little bit more vegetation besides just the frozen peas. Um, a little bit of diced sautéed celery and a little bit of sautéed, caramelized onion would probably add a lot to this, um, as well as a bit more seasoning, because really all you have is salt and pepper, and the pimento, I guess, adds a bit. But you know, some things, I mean, even like a little dash of like Old Bay seasoning um, would not be amiss. And then the cottage cheese is really kind of extra. I don't think it really adds anything to this. I would just do a regular, in this case, salmon noodle casserole, but with more vegetables, more spices and seasonings, and I'd leave the cottage cheese out. I don't think it really adds anything to this. This is just a bit of a muchness. So their recipe, quote unquote, is to take slices of toast, trim the crusts off, spread them with mayonnaise, then add slices of Velveeta processed cheese food, uh, slices of apple, which have been brushed with margarine because you need more fat on this apparently, sprinkle with brown sugar, and then broil them, and then add 2 pieces of bacon on the top of that, and bake some more until the Velveeta is melted and the bacon is crisp. and you serve this hot. Uh, it might taste okay. Um, I personally would go with a sharp cheddar instead of just Velveeta. Um, One, because it just has a bit more flavor. Apples and cheddar it's a very British combination. Um, and then the pork, pork fat, the smoky bacon is not a bad idea. Um, but this seems like you're trying to gussy up a bunch of ingredients that you happen to have on hand. Not bad. I don't know about the brown sugar. It seems like you're combining too many things. Apples and cheese, like cheddar cheese, go together. Apples and bacon go together. Apples and brown sugar go together. I don't know that brown sugar and Velveeta cheese go together. um, yeah, I'm a little leery about this. Um, I think this is one of the things where you should either go either sweet or savory, not both. So I would probably go more in the savory direction with the cheese and the bacon, with just a little hint of sweetness from the apples, but you know, even kind of kick it up with a little bit of cayenne pepper or smoked paprika or something like that. Um, if you wanted to go in the sweet direction, instead of, well, definitely not the Velveeta, but instead of the sharp cheddar, you could use a softer, more dessert-oriented cheese, like a good goat cheese, like a Chev, or even like a Fontina, or Boursin cheese, um, with a little bit of honey instead of the brown sugar. Um, I think that would go a little bit better. Ah, yes, tuna rarebit. No such animal, but okay. So they're basically taking the idea of Welsh rarebit, which is essentially toast with gravy on it. And I think a little cheese is classic. Uh, and they're adding canned tuna to it. I don't think this really elevates anything, any of those ingredients, at all. This is I think basically the idea is if all you have are some hamburger buns, which is what this is using instead of regular of just plain toast. If all you have is hamburger buns and the ingredients to make a white sauce and some canned tuna, and you had to figure out how to make a dinner out of that, then I guess this is what you come up with. But this is a couple of ingredients away from tuna noodle casserole. If you had some dry pasta in the pantry, and maybe some canned or frozen vegetables or fresh, God forbid, that you could saute up, you'd have a tuna noodle casserole right then and there. Or I suppose if you didn't have pasta but you did have a whole bunch of hamburger buns around, you could uh, sort of rough dice the hamburger buns up into cubes, kind of make them into croutons, toast them off, then mix them with the tuna and the white sauce. And if you had some canned vegetables or some frozen vegetables or whatever, mix them all together and make sort of a tuna bread pudding, with some seasonings, obviously. Um, I think that would be better. I don't know if it would be better, to be honest, but I'm fairly sure that it would be better than this. This is kind of sort of the aquatic version of chipped beef on toast, or the much maligned SOS. Yeah, I really don't think that this is going to be really all that great, but it'd be too easy to just take this in any direction. It would be better. Yankee Doodle Pizza Pie. This frightens me. Um, First of all, you're putting pork and beans on a pizza. Um, and oh, by the way, your pizza crust consists of a roll of refrigerator biscuits that you smash down into the shape of a pizza crust. It's not going to have the same texture. It's certainly not going to crisp up and have the nice chewy texture and really the structural integrity to hold up to having all these wet ingredients on top of them. So you're certainly not going to be picking these slices up. It's probably going to kind of crumble because really they're they're biscuits. They're meant to be fluffy. They're meant to be kind of have a nice crumb to them. They're not meant to actually hold together and have a lot of wet ingredients on top of them. And then the fact that you're actually putting spaghetti sauce and canned pork and beans on top of this pizza uh, is a little bit frightening. That's they do mention uh, grated Marinelle cheese, so cheese and pepper rings on top of this. Okay, serve with Italian sausage, mushroom, pimento, or anchovy. Um, doesn't actually say that you put that on the pizza. So you have the ingredients that would be appropriate on a pizza served alongside it, but then you have pork and beans on the actual pizza itself. Uh, I don't know what they're doing here, to be honest. The reason why I say this is easy to redeem is these are all fairly good ingredients and or dishes all on their own. Um, Combining them in this way is weird. um, Now, one thing I will say you could do that would be interesting. I'm not saying they'll be good. I'm not saying they'll be bad, but it'd be interesting. Leave out the baked beans. That's incongruous with everything here. But if you want to use the refrigerator biscuits, you can make a layer of the refrigerator biscuits, relatively thin. Roll them out, press them out, or roll them out, so they're relatively thin. Um, Put your pizza sauce, some cheese, and your actual pizza ingredients in there, and then put another layer that you've rolled out of the refrigerator biscuit as a topping to this sort of a pizza pie. And what you end up having is sort of a pizza cobbler in a way. You have this biscuit topping, and you could even sprinkle some more cheese on the top of the biscuit top, the top layer of biscuit. I don't know that it would be any good, but I think it would be interesting. Like I said, it's definitely not going to be something that you'd cut slices out and pick up. It's not going to be like a calzone. The biscuits just don't have the same sort of structure to them that actual pizza dough has. You haven't developed gluten in them. But I think it could be interesting and as an alternative to just a regular pizza. The baked beans really have nothing to do with pizza, so I would just leave them off and do something else with them. Next, the potato salad pie, which is not as weird as it looks, but it's also not really that necessary either. So, what they've essentially done in this, I don't have the actual recipe handy, but what they've basically done is they've made some potato salad and they've made a quote unquote crust out of it, and then they've sort of pureed some of their potato salad to put in the center so it's like a pie filling. Those I don't know what they've done with the photography here, but those are actually just little plum tomatoes. I don't know why they look so translucent in this, but they're just plum tomatoes and some herbage that they've made look like cherries, but they're really not. They're regular tomatoes. This is just gussying up something that should be just fine. Potato salad, if you do a good potato salad, there's no reason to dress it up. If they like potato salad, they're going to eat the potato salad. Um, by whipping it up, the stuff in the center, it's sort of like mashed potatoes, but it's got a whole bunch of mayonnaise in it. Um, so it almost becomes like a potato dip, but meh. um, if you put a lot of garlic in there, that's great. But there's no reason to redeem this. I'm sure it tastes fine, but just make the potato salad. I mean, people like potato salad all by itself, and you can, you know, you can put your effort into making a really good potato salad and put extra flavoring ingredients in there that will make it more attractive. Like say, I started off with 2 pounds of bacon with this, and everyone will say, "Great, give me some of that." like caramelized onions and whatever. Make a great potato salad, and you don't need to make a pie into it, or the Leaning Tower of Pisa out of potato salad or whatever. Just a big bowl of potato salad and a spoon. If you make it, they will come. Next, the Frankfurters and corn casserole. Wow. This is unnecessary. People like hot dogs. People like now the corn casserole. I don't have the recipe handy to show you, but it's essentially halfway between cornbread and polenta. It's a little bit looser, or cream, like cream corn with flour in it, is what it ends up being like. So yeah, it again, it probably tastes just fine. Um, cream corn slash cornbread slash polenta. It's all good. It's tasty. It's fine. Baking it with the frankfurters, some of the salty juices that would probably come out, especially since you've scored the frankfurters, will permeate into a little bit into the corn casserole and season it some more if you haven't already. It's got some dairy in it, so I'm sure it tastes fine. But honestly, have some hot dogs, or some pork product, and make some polenta or cornbread or creamed corn or whatever. Um, this seems like extra steps. Or make corn dogs, because that's essentially what it is. This is really, it's a corn dog casserole. I would, in fact, chop up at least slice the frankfurters so they're sort of homogeneously distributed throughout the casserole, and everybody gets a little bit of hot dog in every bite. Um, but really, I think hot dogs with some cornbread on the side, nothing wrong with that. Ah, the American lasagna, because making a regular lasagna is not good enough. It's got to be Americanized, um, which in a lot of cases means make it worse, because you look at the fact that this is a recipe that's put out by the Dow Chemical Company. I don't know if I really want to trust them for culinary advice. But in any case, it seems pretty standard until you get down to, okay, they use cottage cheese instead of ricotta. There are differences, but they're probably kind of subtle once you get done with it. But then you use sliced processed American cheese, instead of, well, actually no, there's Parmesan and Romano, so you're using American cheese in here, in addition to Parmesan Romano instead of mozzarella. And but otherwise, this is a fairly standard, if actually kind of bland, lasagna recipe. Um, okay, but in this day and age, do we really need to? This goes right along with your freedom fries. Really, do we really need to say, oh, this is an American lasagna instead of an Italian lasagna? Just make it a lasagna. Make it classic lasagna. It's it's good, and it's survived this long because it's good, just the way it is, without changing anything. If you want to, I would use more, um, a meat filling of some sort, other than just tomato sauce, cheese, and noodles. I would have some meat to this, make a sort of a bolognese sauce, to put in here. Or with the tomato sauce, you could have like sauteed spinach and have kind of a vegetarian, with sauteed spinach, caramelized onion, uh, and your tomato sauce. You probably want to sort of boost that a bit with some aromatics. So you can get a mirepoix of your sauteed carrot, celery, and onion in there. Um, and a half teaspoon of basil for a full uh, pan of lasagna seems a little thin. So I don't know. Just make a regular lasagna, and I think everyone will be happy. Ground beef gumbos. Now, you should always be wary if your recipe lists the finished product as one of the ingredients in the finished product, third line down on this recipe is a can of condensed chicken gumbo soup, drained of excess liquid. So you're making gumbo and you start off with gumbo. But you're taking chicken gumbo, you're adding sauteed ground beef with some onion, ketchup and mustard, and a little bit of salt. You're cooking this in the microwave, and then you're pouring it over English muffins, or mighty generous of them, if you don't happen to have English muffins, you can use hamburger buns. What are you doing? This is ridiculous. If you want gumbo, make gumbo. And it's use quality ingredients. Make an actual gumbo. If you are really bad at cooking soups, then go buy some gumbo. They come. There's canned gumbo. There's most grocery stores actually have a deli section that have gumbo. Maybe not every day, but probably once a week they have gumbo available. Just get real gumbo. Why would you do this? I, I don't know why you would do this. Okay, baked bologna jubilee. Basically, you're buying a giant 3-pound tube of bologna, studding it with cloves and baking it with cut up fresh fruits. It looks like we have bananas here. I think those are cherries. Uh, I'm not sure if those are cherries or blueberries or what they are. This doesn't say. It just says cut up fresh fruits. And then you sprinkle this with sugar and cinnamon and sprinkle it with lemon juice. Actually, you toss the fruit in that. And then you bake it. First of all, in this day and age, I don't know that anyone's actually buying a 3-pound loaf of bologna and bringing that home. So this is very definitely old school, where you would actually bake a bologna for dinner. Um, but there are other things that you could do that would probably be better. I don't know. From the fact that it's probably more difficult to actually buy a full loaf of bologna. They have them in your deli section. They typically slice them for you, but if you want, you can actually order a whole, a large chunk of bologna. But let's be honest, why would you? This is very old school. If you were going to do this, I would actually, well, I don't know if I would do it with bologna, maybe with like prosciutto ham or something. Wrap that. It's fairly common to have prosciutto wrapped around melon slices as sort of an hors d'oeuvre. Um, you could try that with other types of fruit, so like the bananas here, or pineapple slices or something like that. And I would probably just cube it, serve it on skewers or toothpicks, rather than having a carvable uh, roast of bologna.
So what'd you think? These are mini redemptions in a way, just basically suggestions on how to fix a recipe that is otherwise perfectly acceptable, but just needs a little tweaking in order to make it up to par. Please comment and let me know. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Please let me know. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay tuned for episode 3. The big one, the irredeemable.